because I remember in the hospital, like, dang, I didn't get to pursue my dreams the way I wanted to. And I'm like, this is not how my story is supposed to end. Like, it can't. So it was like, okay, when I go home, I get myself together and I'm going to put myself back on track. Baking cookies for other people has allowed me to really open up and come out of my shell and be comfortable with myself, because now I have a level of confidence in myself. Like, I was good at a lot of things, but I was a master of none. It showed me that I was like, man, I'm sitting on my own acre of diamonds right now. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to lose hold of my dream. There's all of these things that I feel on a daily basis. I want to just tell people that it's normal, but you have to fight through it. Hi, this is Yasmin McKinney of Sweet Blooming August, and you're listening to Dreams and Drive.
This episode of Dreams and Drive is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's is more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. I'm loving it. Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 282 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. And I'm really excited for you all to hear from today's guest, Yasmin McKinney, who is a cookie artist and baker who helps people celebrate their life special moments with handcrafted desserts. What you guys are going to learn today is the idea that you are both the person holding yourself back and also the person that will move yourself forward. Yasmin is going to share with us her story of personal transformation and how a traumatic event following the birth of her son opened her eyes, right, to the question of, am I doing what I love? Would I be okay with this being how my story ended, right? I'm really happy and grateful for Yaz. Not only has she been a listener of the show from day one, she's an OG dream driver, right? She's a constant supporter. She's also someone who's the definition of figuring it out, not being afraid to hold herself accountable, being self-aware. She told me during the interview, I want to live my life doing what I enjoy. And I think that's what a lot of us are trying to figure out. How can we live our lives doing what we enjoy and find fulfillment, right? And something else that we talk about in this episode is the idea that dream driving doesn't have to be big and flashy. You have to be the CEO and doing all this huge, grandiose stuff, right? A lot of us are hustling part-time, working a full-time job. And Yasmin admits she doesn't have it all figured out. And I think that's part of the joy and also part of the challenge of dream driving. So this episode is going to be somebody who is in real time figuring out what it takes to put her dream in drive, and she keeps it 100% about what that entails. I hope you enjoy this one, and I encourage you to find the bits and pieces that you need as fuel for your own journey, because I know I did. As always, if you love this episode, please make sure that you're sharing it, right? You can find us across social on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Dreams and Drive. I love it when you guys are posting to Instagram stories, posting it to your Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever you are, sending, a text message to your friends. Please share this episode. Send it to somebody who needs to hear Yasmin's story. And if you want to join our email newsletter and get weekly updates from me, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join. All right, let's hear from Yas.
Hi, Raina.
I am so excited to have you on. How are you feeling right now?
I'm super excited. I'm a little nervous, but I'm so excited to be talking to you today. So let's just get into it. Let's go for it.
Yeah, let's give the listeners a little bit of a backstory, right? So Yaz is actually a super Dreams and Drive fan. You have been with me from the beginning. You have been along the dream driving journey and have seen how I have evolved. We've been social media friends for a while. And when I saw that you submitted to be a guest on the show, I was so happy and knew that your story would definitely be one that would be inspiring to our listeners.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'm super honored with the fact that you chose me to be a guest on your show. I wasn't just banking on the fact that we've kind of built this, little relationship on social media. I was just really hoping, I hope she finds my story valuable of what she knows about me. So that's kind of where I was thinking.
Yeah.
Just thank you. So a little bit of background about me. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, Carson, California, to be exact. I'm currently living in Houston, Texas, a little suburb right outside. And I'm a baker. I'm also an artist. I am a mom. I'm a wife. I am many things. And I am on this journey of really pursuing my passion to do what I love and encourage people to do the same, because the more we do things that bring us joy, the better we can be for other people.
Definitely. But, before we get into the journey, right, we got to start. We got to start at the beginning. So I want to go back to, you said Carson City, California. That's where you grew up. Was that where you spent your childhood as well?
Yes, I grew up in Carson, born and raised. So if you've ever been to LA before, like when people say they're from LA, they're from like LA County or LA area. And then there's a city of Los Angeles as well within that. So I grew up probably about 10 minutes away from the city of Los Angeles, but in LA County. So sometimes I say I'm from LA, sometimes I say I'm from Carson. It just kind of depends. But that's where I grew up. Carson, I spent a lot of time in South Central with my parents because that's where we went to church. And my parents were really involved into the church. I mean, we were there like 4 days a week sometimes because my dad was the musician, as well as he worked in the finance department for the church. So we were there like all the time. But that's where I'm from, Carson, LA area. And I don't live there anymore, but I miss it like so much.
What inspired you as a kid growing up in Carson? What was it about LA, or what was it about the world at a young age that really got you going?
I sometimes think about that a lot. And as I've become an adult, I've kind of tried to go back into what made little Yaz bloom. I was very shy growing up, but because I grew up like in church, I was at the same church my whole life. They felt like family to me. So I was really comfortable. So I was in dance, I was in choir, I was in a lot of these different things that allowed me to really shine, even though outside of that, I was really shy. And I would be really quiet and, wouldn't really say much, but you put me in those environments. I would just, like I said, just really shine. It was something that I really loved to do. So at the time, I just didn't really know what it is that I wanted to do. I knew that at some point I wanted to be an entrepreneur and to wear many hats. Like that's something that I remember vividly saying in one of my classes. I wanted to be an entrepreneur and own many businesses. I didn't know what that looked like. I think a restaurant was somewhere in there, but I just didn't know. I just knew I just wanted to do something creative because when I was a kid, like art was my favorite subject, sports, dance. I was on a dance team, just like you were. I did a lot of these things creatively that I knew at some point I wanted to do something creative. And I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I knew that I was going to get there. And eventually I kind of dabbled a little bit into acting here and there because I had a friend who was an actress. And I thought
you were in California too, right? Isn't that the stereotype?
Look, growing up in LA, it is really the thing. You know somebody who does acting, or have done it at some point. And like that same friend, she's done plenty of things. She was a dancer for like top artists. You know what I'm saying? Like I used to live down the street from the boy that played in Nutty Professor. I could go on and on. And it's funny because growing up in LA is like those random moments where you just see famous people and
this is normal.
And it's normal. Your friend is so-and-so's cousin and they show up at the birthday party. Brandy Norwood used to go to my elementary school. So it's kind of those fun moments about LA, growing up there. And at one point, like I said, I thought I wanted to be an actress, but I quickly found out later on that my heart wasn't really in it. So I eventually kind of let that go and just kind of did my thing with. I think what I love about LA and how it has inspired me the most now that I don't live there is that I miss the energy of people going after what they love, right? Because especially when I got into college, I I have friends that are actresses, musicians, artists, just doing things that they love, business owners, like they're in different industries and they're doing what they really enjoy doing. And that kind of like just fell onto me as I was figuring out what I want to do in life. I really took little pieces of everyone around me to be like, okay, I want that same joy. Like I see the joy that she gets when she gets off stage doing what she just did. That's kind of like what's been instilled in me, even to this day. Now, when I'm doing cookies, is I look back to, even though I'm not in LA, I can still have that same energy here. Because, a lot of people, they move from wherever wherever they are or wherever they grew up to go to LA to be something, but you really don't have to move to do that. You know what I'm saying? It's like
especially
you can
not in 2021, like with the digital age and with internet,
times
you really
have
don't
changed
have
for
to.
sure. And, for sure. But it's like, that's the one thing that from LA, it's inspired me, is that people are doing what it is that they love to do, and they're doing it every day. And that's what I want to do. I want to be living like my life, doing what I enjoy and making a living off of that.
Where did baking come in? I know that you said you had an easy bake oven when you were growing up, right? You
Yes.
loved cooking. You thought you might want to be a restaurant, have your own restaurant. Talk to me like just about your memories of baking, and then we can kind of talk about how those threads kind of have moved forward in your life since then.
I was in the kitchen a lot with my grandmother, and she was a very good cook. Like, even though she died when I was 11, I still remember seeing her in the kitchen making gumbo. We'd be, as a family, be peeling mounds of shrimp and getting the crab ready in preparation for gumbo before Thanksgiving and Christmas or any of the other holidays. And she would make this lime jello cake or something, and it was like a neon green, and we called it a Ninja Turtle cake because it was green. And she made that all the time for the family, every gathering. And that was kind of like her thing. And I'd watch her make it. I still don't know how to make it. I have to figure it out. That's one thing I have to do. But just watching her, it just brought so much joy. And, of course, I had my easy bake oven. I'd be, putting my little frosting on my little cake that I just made, or my little brownie and things like that. So it was always an interest for me, but it wasn't until I got to college and I just started doing it a little bit more. I made a birthday cake for my brother. It was horrible looking back at it now. Like, I don't have any pictures, but like, I remember what I did, and I'm like, yeah, it didn't look so great, but it tasted good. And then I just kept doing it, and people liked it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe this is something I can do after college.
What did you go to college for?
I eventually graduated.
Okay.
I'll say that because I changed a lot. I eventually graduated with a degree in journalism with an emphasis in public relations.
All right. So you weren't thinking about like doing the full-time culinary stuff while you were in college?
No, it didn't come into, while I was pursuing it. Well, see, let me back up. Okay, because I moved away from LA during college.
Okay.
And I moved from LA to Houston, and I was so like, basically, I just felt like my world was just over. I'm like, why did it just happened so fast?
That's a very big shift. Like,
yes. And at the time, like, a lot of things in Houston were not really built up as they are now. So I hated it here. It rained like the first 2 weeks, like the full first 2 weeks, like boom, type of like scary rain. And it was summertime. And I was closed-minded about the whole situation. So when I got here, I messed up in school. And I just really took it personal, and with my parents, like, y'all moved me here when I really could have just stayed in LA, but I just didn't feel like I was ready just yet. And it happened so fast. So I ended up going And as soon as I got here, I closed my mind off of it. I messed up in school, which meant that I also lost credits as well from the college that I started at, Cal State Long Beach in LA. So it's like I went through this whole thing of just searching, like, what do I want to do? So I thought I wanted to do business. I thought I wanted to do interior design. I thought I wanted to do a bunch of different things. And I took the classes, declared it, and then eventually I settled on marketing. And then that's when I got myself together and went to a junior college. And that's where I started turning things around there. That's where a lot of things started turning around for myself personally as well. And I just really had a heart-to-heart moment with myself. Like, you got to get yourself together. Like, you are wasting time.
How did you get yourself out of that, though? Like, how did you get to the point where you were willing to listen to yourself? Because I feel like a lot of times we may have these conversations with ourselves, but we just talk and we don't do anything about that conversation.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things where when I look back at what one of my friends has always told me since we've been friends since we were kids, he was like, that's something like, he's like, yes, you're always aware of yourself. Like, even though you didn't have an explanation of why you did certain things, like, you always were self-aware and you can reflect on what you did and how you can do it better. And I don't think I knew how to put that into words like when I was younger, but it got to a point where like I was miserable out here. And my dad had this book called Think and Grow Rich, but it was the one that Dennis Kimbrough, he was a professor at Howard at one time. He kind of continued Napoleon Hill and brought in examples in that book of famous Black people of how they were able to achieve success by using their mind. So he just sat it on the table and it was there probably for like 2 months. And I was like, I'm not reading that. And finally, one day I was just sick of just being miserable. I didn't have any friends out here. It was a year and a half into moving here. And I probably carried that attitude of I'm from LA.
Y'all whack.
it's whack out here. You know what I'm saying? Like, what y'all do for fun, I probably did. And I'm, not even gonna, make excuses for that. But I was definitely closed-minded. And I just found myself like, dude, I messed up in school. And it's like, I had to like look around and just realize that, wow, I'm really blessed though. Because I moved out here. I didn't have to pay any out-of-state tuition because my dad's job relocated us here. So because of that specific circumstance, my out-of-state tuition was waived. So it's not like I was paying a whole lot for college in a new state. Our home was beautiful. It was way more than what we could have had in LA. And I was healthy. Like, everything was fine. But for some reason, mentally, I just could not wrap my head around the fact that, and two, I was dating someone that I thought was just going to be, it. But I just could not let go of what the life that I left in LA. I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be with this person. I wanted to live in LA and go to the beach and, all these things. And I realized, that I needed to change my mindset when I opened the book. And it started off in the introduction that said, it had this parable called The Acre of Diamonds. So I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but basically, just to kind of paraphrase it, the Acre of Diamonds is where it's like this man, he was miserable. He was supposed to have lived on this land that was supposed to bring him a lot of riches and diamonds and things like that. But he got frustrated. He ended up leaving and selling his money for dirt cheap. And someone ended up buying his property and years later ended up finding the jewels that the guy was looking for, when it was right there all along. And it really, I just kind of went there really quickly, but it showed me that I was like, man, I'm sitting on my own acre of diamonds right now.
Your own personal jewels.
Right. And the grass is not always greener on the other side. And when I read that, it just hit me at a time where it's like, I am my own problem right now. I am miserable because I have made myself miserable. I have made myself close-minded to the opportunities instead of just coming here and focusing on school. I could have been back to LA and graduated by the time or coming up, you know what I mean? But instead I wasted about 2 to 3 years and pushed myself back even further when I could have just came here and just did what I needed to do. So that was my first like thing that changed my mindset, because I really had a breakdown, because I was like, I'm miserable and I need to get out of this. And I had a moment, like a real moment. And that book helped me to change my mindset, and that it's all in my thinking and my perspective. That was like the initial shift. And then I just started making different decisions after that. So I know we kind of like steered away from like the baking thing, but like,
no, but that you have to get your mind right? Like, cause I think you said this in maybe one of your other interviews, but it's really more mental than physical for a lot of us. Like, you can figure out all the tactics, you can figure out how to become a better baker, but if your mind isn't there, then you're not going to do anything with any of that physical stuff. You know what I mean?
Absolutely right. So I kind of went through all of that, right? And then to kind of fast forward a little bit, I moved back to LA. And so I did the baking here. I figured out like, oh, okay, maybe I'll do it later. So I went back to LA to finish college, because at that point I figured out, oh, okay, I know what it is that I want to do. I was still in business marketing. And then I eventually changed to journalism in PR after talking to one of my teachers. But while I was in LA, it kind of sparked that thing that I was looking for that I didn't have in Houston. And I was around that young energy, just young people just going after their dreams. So it really inspired me as I was trying to, spread my wings and fly because I needed to get out of my parents' house just to kind of think on my own. Not that they did a bad job with me. I needed to be me and figure out what that was away from my parents. So that's why I moved back to LA. And while I was there, while we went over our friend's house, and for my roommates, we had a full kitchen in our dorms. It was like little apartments. So I would just be baking all the time. I'd make red velvet cake, cupcakes, cookies, brownies, everything. And our friends always got together at another friend's house, and I just bring it along. Or if we're just hanging out, they're like, "Hey, Yas, can you bake this?" And they're like, "You're really good." And a couple people asked me to bake some things for them. I'm like, "Oh, thank you."
But at this point, you still hadn't thought about connecting with the business, or you were just kind of doing it for your own fun at this point?
I was doing it for fun. And then all of a sudden in my PR classes, we had to create these ideas of press releases and media alerts and magazines and brochures and articles. We had to make up these stories. And the only thing that I could reach back to that the ideas flowed was hair and food. And so food kind of came out more. And within my school projects, I created all of these different types of restaurants and menus and media alerts and events kind of around that I was like, wow, I really have like an interest in this. So that's where it really stuck with me. And I was like, okay, after I graduate from college, I'm going to do something with this. And so that's where I just kind of put it in my back pocket, and I just noticed the things that I was writing about were my real interest, and I could just talk about it. I could just write about it. And I was like, okay, cool. That's what I'm going to do. And then after I graduated from college, I guess about a year and a half later, one of my good friends, she enrolled in a culinary school. And that was kind of like the light went off. And I was like, okay, I've been saying this. And I was like, so good for you. I was like, and thank you for sharing that with me, because knowing that she took a step to go like follow her dream, because she's a chef now, which she's the bomb. Like Chef Angela Bowie, if you're ever in LA, like she's the bomb. But she enrolled in culinary school. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I need to too. She was like, yes, you should. You've been talking about this forever. And so I went to go check it out. And when I was in the kitchen, I just felt at home.
Isn't that such an important realization too, right? Like, yes. It felt right. And you got to listen to that sometimes.
And now I think that was one of the first times in my life I really understood that meaning of, it when you feel it. And that was that moment for me where it's like, okay, I got to figure out how to make this happen. And so eventually I went through the whole application process and I got accepted and I went. And that was kind of like the next step in my journey. So everything is in different stages. So everything kind of flowed into one thing or another. But that's how I really got into baking and took it seriously. That was like my first real thing. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't really making anything real decorative or really nice. It just tasted good at that point. But I knew that I needed something to kind of propel my interest and give me some guidance into the field of pastry that I knew I eventually wanted to be in. So I figured that would help me out. And that was kind of like another thing that helped to propel my interest and take it real seriously.
So I know we took a lot of time like get into the backstory, right? So what was the moment for you, or what was the defining moment that really changed things? At this point, were you married yet? Did you have your son yet at this point?
I did not have my son yet.
Okay. So you were thinking, all right, I'm gonna go to culinary school. What did you think was gonna happen with the culinary school and post culinary school?
Okay. So that's where my life took a major shift, because when I signed up for culinary school, I was working full time, and I just convinced my husband. I was like, look, this is what I need to do, and we're going to figure out how to make this work. Well, 3 semesters in after culinary school started, I found out I was pregnant with my son. And when I tell you the phrase, when it's hot in the kitchen, you get out when it's too hot. I realized at that moment that if I continued the way I was going to cause harm to myself and the baby. Because when I tell you that kitchen is hot.
Oh, like you mean legit? You're actually talking about
legit, like the kitchen. We were in the kitchen for 4 days a week from 7:15 to about 12:45 every day. And then I get up and go to work, work a full day's job, get off at 5 and then shooting straight to do this 4 days a week, right? And it was so hot in the kitchen that when I was pregnant, it was halfway through the semester. And when I tell you, I felt like I was going to faint. I was tired.
I never knew that. Like you think about kitchens being hot, but I would never put that together. Like that actually is not good for you or the child.
Yeah. And it's like in a restaurant, because I worked in a restaurant before as well. Like the kitchen, it gets really hot because the burners are going all the time. Yeah. The ovens are going all the time. So it really does get hot in there, especially when you're moving around 3-4 hours at a time. You got all this clothing on, you got heavy boots on that's non-slick, and it's just really hot in there. So it came to a point where I was like, okay, I have to like slow down because I can't do this and go to work full time. So I decided to put it on hold after deciding, do I want to move forward or not? I decided to put it on hold would be like my best decision at the moment. And after I have the baby, I'll pick back up. So fast forward, I put it on hold, and I actually cried when I did that, to be honest.
I was going to ask you, how did that feel? Because think about it, for so long, like,
right. That was like my first real step, like first big girl real step towards something that I wanted to do. And to put it on hold, like, hurt me a lot. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to lose hold of my dream. So I gathered all of my old school projects, right? Because I kept them. Mm-hmm. All the things that kind of led up to that moment, I put it in a book. I put in all my classes that I had taken so far, and I just created a booklet for myself that would be a reminder for me that if I ever got sidetracked of just life, not really sidetracked, but just, just kind of went through life and it kind of, gets to the side, I knew that I needed something to pull me back. So I created the book and I just set it aside and I put it in a space where I knew what it was, but I didn't have to open it every day. So eventually, I went through everything. And once I had my son, that's where I had a traumatic experience and shifted my whole life after that. Like I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. I was in ICU for 2 of them. I ended up having an NG tube in my nose. I had a IV pick line in my arm. And that's where, like, I wasn't eating because I couldn't eat because I had the tube down
you
my
were
nose.
also like, this happened immediately after giving birth, right?
But I had an emergency C-section after being induced. And within 24 hours of after the C-section is when I started having problems. And so since he was in NICU as well, I couldn't see him.
Wow.
And I spiked a fever. So I spiked a fever first. And then after that, I just couldn't keep anything down. Like I was throwing it, like it was just really horrible. And I wasn't eating anything. So I shouldn't have been throwing up or, anything like that, going to the bathroom. So it just kind of progressively got worse and worse. And there's moments in the hospital that are really painful. Basically, it just got worse and worse. So eventually they moved me to ICU and they put the NG tube down for a second time because they had put it in for a couple of days. They thought it was fine and then took it out. And then the problem started happening again. And they put the NG tube back in when I got to ICU. And then they monitored me. They put me on oxygen because I had stopped breathing at a certain point. So I guess that's when I discovered I had sleep apnea. But I set off all the alarms where the nurses came in there and was like, Yasmin, wake up. Like, are you okay? So they put me on oxygen. And then a couple of days later, they decided to do another surgery to just kind of figure out what was going on because my stomach was basically sleep. It was like still paralyzed from the C-section.
Wow.
On top of that, I still had a fever. A lot of fluids was being drained out of my nose from my stomach. So there were like my legs were swollen. Like it was a lot of things wrong. Right. And so they did the surgery and then I guess it was exploratory to just kind of take cultures of different parts of my body to try to find antibiotics that will help my body heal. I'm also allergic to penicillin. So that was also the delay in getting me medication because they had to call an infectious disease specialist to come find the medicine that will help me and that I wouldn't have an allergic reaction to. So anyways, I had pneumonia. I had it was a lot of things and it was a long road to recovery. And it was also like very isolating as well. Like outside of my window was another brick wall. So there was nothing that I could really
You're
see.
with your thoughts. Like it's just you and
you're with your thoughts.
Right?
Yes. And some days I would just be sitting there looking like I was tired of watching TV, right? Only so much TV I could watch. And at that point, I didn't watch a lot of TV anyway. So I was tired of it. So I just turn on the nature sounds. And sometimes I just sit there. I, pray a little bit, kind of read different books or, I'd talk with people who would come and visit me here and there, but I really wasn't up for talking because I was in pain. Mm-hmm. Like I could not move, like trying to adjust my body to the other side. I needed help. Like I was setting off all the alarms and my chest was beating, just adjusting myself in the hospital bed. And so it just really hit me to where it's like, okay, first of all, I don't know how I got here because I really just came in to have a baby. And now I'm fighting for my life. And these doctors do not know what's wrong with me right now. And so it was a lot of questioning, like, why, God? Like, okay, why is this my story? Like, why? And I'm like, I have to go home. Like, this is not how my story is supposed to end.
You hadn't met your son at this point either, right?
I saw him maybe once or twice. But at that point, when I was in ICU, it had been a week already.
Yeah.
So I hadn't seen him in another week. So I'm dealing with that. I can only see him through pictures. The nurses and my family are the ones taking care of him. And while I'm in the hospital bed, doctors and nurses coming in all the time. They giving me medication and vitamins through the IV pick line. And I'm really just sitting here wondering, like, am I really going to go home? But I just knew after a while, I was like, okay, this is fight time. I knew, like, in my mind, I was like, I have to make myself go home. I said, I don't know what's going on with my body, but I was just like, no, I'm speaking to my body as if I'm healed. So it would be times I might have sounded crazy. I don't know if anybody heard me, but I was like, no, Yasmin, you are healed. You're going home. Let's do what you need to do. They said, breathe into this thing because since I had pneumonia, it was mucus filling up in my lungs. So I had to do some deep breathing exercise. So I'm like, okay, the nurse, he told me to come breathe in this machine. Let's do that every day. They told me to get up and walk. I know it's painful. Yep, you almost fainted one time. Okay, get up and walk a little bit. It's okay if you got to do it 5 times and you don't get anywhere. Let's do it. So I had to do the physical work for myself and also take it as angry as I was that happened to me. I knew that I had some level of expectation on myself to do the work myself. Like, okay, like, yes, I prayed. Like everybody was praying for me. The prayers was going up. Okay. But for me, I had to do the work and believe that I was going to go home. And thankfully I did. But that moment always stuck with me because I remember in the hospital, like, dang, I didn't get to pursue my dreams the way I wanted to. And I'm like, this is not how my story is supposed to end. Like, it can't. So I just vowed to myself, like, when I get back home, and I said, when, not if. I said,
you knew
when.
it. It wasn't no. It was. You didn't have any hesitation that you were.
That's what I'm saying. Because I couldn't. At that point, if I didn't get better, I knew what was going to happen. You know what I'm saying? But I was like, no, I got to go home. Like, I can recover from this. So it was like, okay, when I go home, I get myself together and I'm going to put myself back on track to pursue what it is that I wanted to do. And that kind of led to some other things too. But that was like, I know that was a super long explanation, but that was like the super like shift that happened in my life that I'll never be the same from that event. And it took me a long time because it's 8 years now. It took me a long time to even be comfortable to talk about it without tears. Mm-hmm. I had to go to therapy. I had to really do some soul searching and a lot of work on myself to even accept that happened to me. And once I did, it helped me to kind of understand myself a little bit better and what it is I want out of life and to make sure that I'm always on the journey to do more of those things. So if anybody knows something about me, I'm always trying to do something for myself, trying to make something time, for myself. What brings me joy? I'm always, telling people to rest or do those things because certain things in life have really just taught me that it's fine to be on the go and do all these things. But at the same time, you do have to think about yourself. And when you get married, it's the same thing. You have to make time for yourself. When you become a mom, you have to make time for yourself because when you are busy working and taking care of everybody else, you're going to feel drained. And you're the only person who can take care of you the way that you need it to be. As much as you want to be happy and all these other relationships with people outside of you, it is up to you to be right or else nobody else will be.
And then if you're not right too, you can't those dreams of yours couldn't come into fruition, right? It's like you really are the fuel. You, like the inner you is the fuel to the dream. And it's so crazy how that works, right?
Yeah. And that's what kind of led to me doing cookies as well. When I got out of the hospital, I'll just kind of skip over like some things, but I ended up putting myself on this real crazy list of doing more things that I enjoy, right? Because
why you call it crazy? Why was it a crazy?
Because it was a crazy detailed list. Talking about spreadsheets.
Okay, so like crazy as in like you wasn't gonna miss out on nothing that you wanted to do.
I actually did not. Like, seriously, like I was working as an executive assistant. So of course I'm in business and I'm constantly doing things, right? So I was like, okay, I made this crazy spreadsheet that had every single thing that I wanted to do in life because I knew that I wasn't happy and I knew that I had this traumatic experience in my life and I needed to find some sort of healing outside of just going to therapy. Like you have to do the work as part of therapy too, right? So I was like, okay, I have to get back to doing what it is that I love because right now I'm working and I'm a mom and I'm a wife. That's cool and all, but this is not fulfilling. I understood that. So I went back to the drawing board, went back to Little Yaz and what makes me happy. and what it is that I would like to do differently about what I'm doing now. And it was a super list of every single list down to, I want to read 3 books. What are the 3 books? What's the time frame that I'm going to read it in? I want to go to dance class. Okay, I'm going to go twice a month and I'm going here for the whole year. I just got super disciplined. Okay, I want to bake. Okay, well, we're going to try one new recipe a week. Like I literally broke it down to, first of all, a list that I wanted to do, a list of everything, super detailed, broke it down. And then I broke it down to even further of how many times I wanted to do it a year. And I assigned myself when I was going to do it. So I gave myself a deadline. Now, granted, I didn't have to do it by that date, right? But it was like, no, I said I was going to do this once a month. So I'm going to do this once a month. So within that, art was in it, but it's like artwork was on it. I went to paint classes. I didn't go to any cooking classes, but, I just looked online and found recipes. And around that time, when I had that whole list and was kind of going through the motions, that's when I found your podcast. And I was like, oh, okay.
That makes me so happy. I'm not trying to make this about me right now. I'm like, yo, that it's like also like me or my end, right? Like I was wondering, why am I doing this? Let me just try. Let me just put this little dream of mine into motion. And it's crazy how it intersected, right? Here I am starting out, trying to interview people, trying to figure out how to put my own dreams into motion. And you're on this other parallel journey as well. And we kind of intersected. Welcome to an aha moment along your dream driving journey. This aha episode of Dreams and Drive is brought to you by AHA. Before you ask, what are you talking about? Please allow me to explain. Our partner for today is AHA Sparkling Water, and I want to tell you a little bit more about the brand, but we're going to be using some of these AHA moments along the way to help you understand. AHA is a bold, sparkling water with a 2-in-1 flavor combination in every kahan. So some of your flavor combinations can include blueberry and pomegranate, lime and watermelon, or peach and honey. That peach and honey does sound good because I definitely love those 2 flavors. And some flavors like mahango and black tea are even caffeinated with caffeine. Look for AHA anywhere you buy sparkling water and get your hands on some today. You'll probably wonder how you ever lived without it, and I know it sounds too good to be true, but it's not. There's a good chance that you'll never want to drink any other sparkling water ever again. AHA sparkling water. Can I get a AHA?
Yes, it was, I think you were probably only 3 episodes in, and I don't know how I found it. I have no idea. Maybe I was looking for something to feed my mind into a job where I was unhappy working in. So I wanted to feed it like with inspiration. So I think somehow it just kind of came up and I was just stuck, and I just kind of listened to it over time, and it gave me the inspiration that I needed and confirmation that it's like, okay, I can do what I love, and I can, I can just make it happen. I just have to start, just continue doing what I'm doing and listen to how these people have made it work and try to find my own journey. So that was like the whole shift of, wanting to do something, having to put it on hold, and then trying to find my way back when my life shifted and to try to heal myself. And I found myself healed through creativity and through baking, and doing cookies was on that list. So like December of 2016, I finally said, okay, now it's time to try decorating cookies. And I was like, okay, cool. I didn't know what I was doing. They didn't have any videos or anything like that. At the time, like they do now. It wasn't, Instagram wasn't like it is in 2016. So I just decided to try it. And my best friend, she was like, "Oh, can you make me some? Yes. Can you make me some?" I was like, okay. Like it was just some basic Christmas trees. I didn't think nothing of it. The flavor was just bland, it was like whatever. But I was like, okay. And from there, like, I'm so thankful for having a friend who believed in me.
That's all we need. Sometimes you just need one person
Look,
One little
before I
person.
even believed in myself, like it wasn't that she was like, oh, you could do it, yes, blah, blah, blah. She was just like, oh, can you make me some? Oh, I have this event. Can you make me some cookies for this? I'm going here, going there. And I don't know what she thought of it at the time, but she definitely made me believe that she loved it. Because I ended up doing so much for her that it led into other opportunities for myself that eventually made me confident enough to make. I actually looked up and I was like, oh, I have a business. Like before I even made it official, I was already doing orders like a couple times a month without even trying. I just posted
It
my
was
stuff on
natural,
Instagram.
right?
It was a natural progression. And it all came from just my friend believing in me. And I'm so thankful for her. And she always laughs and is like, oh, whatever. I'm like, yes, it is because of you
But
that.
think about it. Sorry, no, keep going.
No,
Sorry.
go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, but also like think about the journey that got you there as well, right? It's like the right time. Like she came in at the right moment when you already done a lot of that groundwork though, too. Yes, you know what I mean?
That's true. I did do a lot of groundwork, but I still didn't believe in myself at that point. Like I was still going through the motions of healing and doing something that I really love. And even at that point, I still didn't know that my business would evolve into doing decorative cookies. I had no idea that in 2016, starting that one thing out of a hobby and eventually became a blog, eventually turned into people asking me to make stuff for them. And then I decided to focus on cookies. And now I've done so many cookies, I can't even think. And some of the opportunities that I've had, I'm just like, wow, like this really just started from me just wanting to do something out of pure joy. And I took to it and I worked at it. And I'm here doing things that I didn't even know. I didn't realize I could paint on a cookie until I did it. And it makes me happy the fact that I finally found something that allows me to interact with the world in ways that I've never been comfortable enough to do because I'm an introvert.
What do you mean by that? Like interacting with the world? Or how do you interact with the world through your art? Maybe you could talk about like even with what you do now, like with your newest inspiration with like the Afro cookies. Like how
Sure.
does that work?
So the way it allows me to interact with the world is that naturally I'm an introvert. You put me into a big room, I'm going to find a corner or a back seat somewhere and I'm going to have a good old time and I'll probably leave as soon as it's over and won't really engage. But guess what? I probably have the time of my life, right? Naturally, I just enjoy time by myself. However, and then sometimes like conversations will be a little bit harder for me to start, just all the introvert things, like that is me. Okay. But you get me talking about baking, cookies, talking about doing what you love, overcoming challenges, motherhood, those things, I come alive. And baking cookies for other people has allowed me to really open up and come out of my shell and be comfortable with myself because now I have a level of confidence in myself from something like I was good at a lot of things, but I was a master of none. I was a good dancer. I was a good singer. I was all these things, but I wasn't really great at it either. So it's like I finally found something that's unique to me. And I gained enough skill in it that gave me the confidence that I needed, which also made me realize how I want to raise up my son as well, so that he can find his own confidence in something for himself. But it's like it allows me to be comfortable and go to places and I can show up and I'm not worried about what to say or I could just kind of relax a little bit in life because I found my thing that lights me up. So I'm interacting with the world in a way that I was just growing up. I was shy. I was quiet. I missed a lot of opportunities because I was scared or too passive about it. So now it's like, no, adult Yaz is much different. I'm a lot more fun. I mean, I still can kind of overthink some situations, and kind of be all in my head. But for the most part, like I'm cool. Like I'm not scared of those moments, but I also recognize when I need to recharge as well because social environments do drain me. Like, okay, I've had enough talking for today, and then I'm gonna go in my own little corner and just do me and I'm fine. So that's what I mean by it allows me to interact with the world in a way that I am more comfortable. And now too, with doing these cookies with images and Afro puffs, and like I just did some the other day and posted in my stories of bearded men in cookies. There's this cookie cutter on Instagram, cookie cutter company, and she is the same maker that does the Afro puffs. And she sent some to me and I did it. And I have a couple other cookie cutters from another company as well. And I just find so much joy in the fact that, number one, I believe wholeheartedly that as Black people, we need to see more images of ourselves in ways that we like, right?
Positive.
The media has controlled so much of that to where you only saw one image of what a Black woman looks like. And since I studied media, that always kind of like just stuck with me of how Black people in particular are perceived in the world. Like when I moved to Houston, I moved to a suburb and there was not a lot of Black people where we lived and where I worked at the time. I was like one of 3 out of like 80 people. And one of my coworkers even told me, you don't act like your stereotype. And I was so offended. I was like, what does that mean? And clearly he had no exposure to Black people other than what he saw on TV or maybe what he saw in a certain environment. You know what I'm saying? And he put me in a box and I was just like, first of all, I was from LA, so I was a little different than Houston, but still I was offended. And so when I put these images on cookies, I'm inspired by all the women that I'm seeing online being their authentic selves and being creative with their styles, with their hair. And I admire their confidence because I wish I had more of that when I was younger. But that's my way of like showing other people that it's like, no, like we're beautiful too. And let me show you this. And because I'm an artist as well, it's kind of my way of marrying my love for art and my love for baking, and doing it on a cookie allows me to marry the two together. And it just so happened that it just happened to be, melanated people that I'm putting on a cookie. I mean, it just kind of happened that way. I did it for my niece, did it for other people that I know. And these are just the people that are ordering it. Pretty soon I would love to try people of different, shades and skin tones and things like that. But for right now, like, this is what feels good. This is what's in my heart. And this is what I feel like people really want to see more of. Like, they're seeing themselves in a way that they never saw before. And I was able to be a part of that. And I really like it.
And through this, like, you're just helping people discover themselves at the same time while you're discovering and you're uncovering different parts of your own self, right? Like, I wrote down some words while you were talking, like this extreme self-awareness that you need to prioritize joy in order for you to unlock your own dream driving potential, right? Like, but that became because you had to go through, not saying you had to go through, but you went through a horrible experience, but through that you were able to, it's kind of like a rebirth in a way, right? You gave birth to your son.
Yeah.
And you had this own rebirth, traumatic, crazy experience, but through that, like you did not give up. And easily that could have been, you could have took it as a sentence, oh, this happened to me, woe is me, but you never made it about that. And I feel like that's so encouraging. And I know somebody listening to this right now might be going through something where they feel like they don't have the agency or they're not in control. But you always, you are in the driver's seat, right? And it really is what you tell yourself. And that can be like the words to yourself can be the fuel that you need. That you're looking everywhere else, but it's always been inside,
Yep. That's what I always tell people. Like, you can pray and ask God to open up doors, whatever it is that you believe. But if you don't do the work, you're not going to get anywhere. If you're not going to look inside yourself, like the power, if God is within you, then everything you need is within you. And like everything, so if you just look more inside of yourself and what brings you joy, what helps you maneuver through life, you know what I'm saying? Like, tap more into that, because that's what's going to open up doors for you. And I'm a testament of that. I had to overcome some really hard things. and some things I didn't even mention that were really hard to overcome as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that I wanted more for myself, and I was the only one who was blocking it. So once I decided, okay, I'm going to continue doing this and I'm going to do it, that was where I understood, like, okay, this is what I need to do and I'm doing it for me. Maybe it's a little bit selfish, but people like this me as well.
How did you hold yourself accountable?
That list.
That's the really, like, just having that list was like.
In the beginning, I'll say in the beginning, that list held me accountable because I went every time I worked on something, I put on that list, I checked it off.
All right.
And I said it was done and I moved on to the next one. And then I looked back on the year. Maybe I didn't achieve everything that I did on that list, but I did about 90% of it. And it led me to where I am now. So now I don't have such a crazy list, but I do have a list that at least kind of puts me in the direction of things that I know that I want for my life and what I want to work on. And then I take some time to reflect because I've definitely hit some moments of burnout where I feel like I don't want to do this anymore. And I've hit a couple of those. And one of those was recently. And that's where I had to put like limitations on myself and how I'm going to operate my business until I figure out how to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really just, I like my job, right? But I'm not fulfilled.
You talking about your full-time job or the baking? Okay.
Like my job, because I'm still working full-time.
Okay.
And I'm baking part-time. I know that I get more fulfillment being creative. I am going to commit to being more creative until whatever works itself out in the real world for me to, have either another job that is creative or maybe I don't know, whatever the next step is, right? I'm committed to doing more of what makes me happy. So eventually, if I get off track, I have things around me. Like I have a craft room surrounded by my art. It constantly reminds me that, no, you are a creative. This is where you thrive. And sometimes I wish I had honored this part of myself before. I was taught to have go to college, get a good job, things like that, right? I didn't really know that I could make a living from creating art or baking cookies. I just didn't know.
It seems so like, wait, baking cookies, you're going to do what? This is going to be a lot. But
right.
There's joy in that. The little things can really be big things. It's just all about perspective.
Yeah. And until I am able to really, continue to pursue it the way that I want to, like, I'm not going to give up, because I remember sitting in the hospital room thinking if I just had one more chance, well, what would I do? So I feel like my story is still being, played out. Like things are still happening. And I don't know. I'm committed to, and just how I just keep going and hold myself accountable is to the fact that little Yaz have wanted to do this for a long time. My college, look, I'm 38 years old, okay? My friends, when I was 23, when I'm bringing cookies and brownies, they remember when I was bringing it and it was good. So they remind me. Like my friends
has always been within you, right? This has always
Yeah, so it's with me. So it's like, just the fact that I stuck with it, my friends have told me that it was inspiring for them to get back to doing something that they've always wanted to do, or what they love and things like that, because I stayed with it and I was resilient and persistent. And I'm just committed to just doing more of what I love. And it feels good to be creative, and that's what fulfills me. So I think that's my accountability, is just looking around and seeing what is coming out of me just by doing what comes natural to me.
What's the challenge for you now, though? Like, what's the one thing that Yaz is still working on?
One thing?
One thing you want to talk about, right? We could talk about a lot.
I know, right? We could talk forever.
I know.
But, well, one challenge for me right now is I'm trying to figure out, where do I go from here? I have hit a few burnouts.
From baking or just life?
From baking. Okay. And just trying to pursue it, right? Because we're in this culture of You got to hustle, you got to grind, you got to do all of this to make it happen. You got to go get it, right? Be aggressive. Okay, so I was aggressive. I was taking all the orders. I was fitting it in and doing all the things while I'm working and being a wife and being a mom. I found myself at a point where I didn't want to do it anymore. I was tired.
Mm-hmm.
I was working 20-hour days, 22-hour days sometimes, sleeping for 1 hour for days at a time, and then going back to work the next day.
Yeah, that's not productive. That's
not productive. You know, it might be sometimes where you do that for a short amount of time, but not for a long period of time. And I was like, this is not the kind of business that I want, nor do I want to continue doing this to make my business happen. Mm-hmm. So that's where it taught me that, okay, yes, I can fulfill what people want, but I have control over this. I can say yes or no. So it taught me to put a cap on my orders so that I don't feel overwhelmed, plan accordingly and stick to the plan, start early, and I don't have to do everything, and make some time for rest. So I learned all of those things, right? But now it's kind of like, okay, it's like right now, my Instagram says that I'm not taking orders, right? That's just to control everything, because
people still gonna be like, yes, can you do this for me, please?
Because seriously, between my immediate family and people that I know personally, mm-hmm. I can fill up my capacity without even sharing with the world that my schedule is open. And so,
first of all, congrats to that, right? Congrats to that.
I'm so happy about that. But at the same time, it's kind of like, wow, I'm growing really fast. Like once I made it a business, and it just came up so fast that it's like, okay, first of all, I had to pull back because what I was doing was not sustainable. And I needed to change what I was doing, just how I was operating and, doing my business. I needed to figure out a different way to grow it that had a little bit more control. So now I have the control back. But now it's kind of like, okay, I'm also missing some opportunities because I'm not saying yes to everything, and I do have it closed off, but I'm also doing that to protect my mind as well, because these cookies sometimes take like hours to do. 1 dozen of cookies can sometimes take like 6 to 8 hours.
Wow.
And then I have to dry them. Like there's making the royal icing, there's making the dough, there's all kinds of things that just make that process really long. And now I understand a little bit more of what type of business I want to have. Yeah. So right now, the stage I'm in and the challenge I'm in right now is trying to figure out, okay, now I understand this. I want this part right here. But I also do a lot of other things that can bring in income without me having to work so hard. So I'm in a area of trying to figure out what that really looks like while trying to fulfill the demand, but also figure out a way that I can scale up and grow. And for the moment, I would like to keep my job because I've been laid off before.
Listen, it's funny because I'm as you know, I'm now working a 9 to 5 again. I'm like, wait, I miss that steady paycheck. And you can still, like, you don't always have to do it, your dream or your passion full time. Like, you can have both, and it's not wrong if you're juggling both, right? As long as you're being kind to yourself, as long as you're not burning yourself out, like, it is perfectly okay to have a 9 to 5 and still do your own thing.
I totally agree.
You got kids now. I can say that. I got a kid.
Right. And they're depending on you to show up in their life. It's been times where I've been super tired and I didn't want to hear what my son had to say. But I decided to listen to him when he was complaining about something, just kind of let him talk it and see what was on his mind. And it turned into a moment where we really bonded and had a really good conversation between mom and son. And I learned things about him that I probably could have just turned him away and he would have had his feelings hurt. And maybe he wouldn't have opened up to me like that again. But because I took the time to just kind of sit there and be with him and listen to him and talk with him, I was able to build that bond that we have and really kind of open up an avenue that made him feel safe to talk to me, and that is a challenge in itself too, just balancing time. How do you show up for my husband? How do I show up for my husband? How do I show up for my family? That, like, I'm getting pulled in so many different directions that it's important to set boundaries as well, because if you don't, like your client, they just want what you have to offer. That doesn't mean that you have to give it to them every single time.
Amen.
And especially when you're building, that's where you have to understand like where your boundaries are, because I have a lot of things going on. I have to make sure that I'm showing up for everything. And, at the same time, since I know I want to grow, I know I don't want something that I just do on the side. I know that I don't want to continue working and trying to make this happen. I would at least eventually like to flip that, and be doing something creative full time. But it's like, how do I go from point A to point B? Like, I've done all the other things in the past. Like, now I'm doing it, right? But I just don't know what that is to get to the next step. And I'm currently trying to figure it out.
We all trying. Like, I love that you're so transparent and open about that, right? Because I know it's like, I'm trying to figure it out too right now, but just being a new mom, I'm like, wait, how does anybody with children do anything? And people who have more than one, I'm like, wait, you got two? Are you crazy? Or you just are always operating on like a level of your mind is just pulled as a mother in so many different directions. And I'm just trying to figure out, how do I make life work? How do I make myself work, right? And how do I not lose sight of, because it's very easy, as you may know, to lose sight of those things. So I love that you have that list. I might need to go and create a master list like that, girl. You could sell, that could be a template you could sell on your baking site, right? Like,
I know it would have, that's something that I'll think about, to be honest, but in order for a person to really utilize it, you have to be really intentional about certain things. And that's something that I have been committed to over the last few years, is to be intentional about everything.
Yeah.
And it's not just give you a list and just do it. And so it might have to be in the form of a course or something like that, like a mini course, like a 3-day thing, just to kind of help guide you and prepare, because you have to really sit here and think like, okay, what do I want to do? Okay. Some people, at New Year's resolutions, they do like their goals. It might be like maybe 5 or something right there. Okay. Well, how are you going to achieve them? Those goals need to be broken down.
Exactly.
So you got to break it down to the very detail. And guess what? Eventually you'll cross off 1, 2, 3. The next thing you know, you've achieved at least halfway. You're a lot further than where you thought you would be, if you didn't have the list. So it really does help. So I don't know. It's something I kind of been thinking about.
You know me, if you talk to me too long, I'd be like, girl, you could do that. You could do that too. So we will.
If you like details, for real, like if you like details about things, like it's a really good tool to kind of just look at it, because these are things that are on your mind, and it's kind of a reflection of you. So you can see yourself on paper and what it is that you want in your life. And you're making your own blueprint of things that you would like to achieve and things that you want to work on, and it'll keep you inspired when you feel like you've taken a break, because I definitely had a moment where the pandemic hit and I was like, oh, okay, all my orders canceled. What do I do now?
People aren't having events. People aren't doing things the same way.
It was definitely a moment of that where I had to put my list to the side and put classes on hold, put, a lot of things I wanted to do, but at least I had something to fall back on, and I can adjust it at any time. It's on my computer. So it's really just a guide to help me and hold myself accountable to just doing more of what I want to do, whether it's business or personal. It's all on there. So it's definitely a great tool that I will definitely continue to use and adjust as I move forward and figure things out.
So, we have been chatting for a while now, and I feel like there's so much stuff that we didn't get to, but I feel like this conversation was a conversation that we both need to have, right? And like we said earlier, like there's so many tactical things. Like we could have asked you marketing tips, we could have asked you all that business stuff, but I feel like the heart of this episode has really been like tapping into yourself and knowing that you had this dream and the evolution of what it took for you to make this happen, and being real about setting boundaries, prioritizing your joy, and celebrating the inner resilient Like you were, I'm this is what I'm hearing, right? Like you a shy girl growing up in Carson City, moved across the country, came back, moved again, right? But think about all those elements of you that really did like bloom. Like, I know your business is called Sweet Blooming August, right?
Yeah.
But
that was intentional.
You really are blooming. I like the progressive tense there, right? Like not bloomed, right? Like you blooming.
Yes.
And I'm just happy that you were able to share your story today.
Thank you for the opportunity. I mean, I feel like we could, talk about way more things, if we have more time, but I know we only got an hour. Yes. I just appreciate just a platform like this that allows people to hear other people's stories and to take little nuggets here and there and build their own story, because, we all want to do something, but sometimes we don't know how is going to get there. Like I've listened to all of your podcasts, right? Whether I comment on it or not, mm-hmm. Like I've literally listened to all of them. And it just really is like something like in my heart that helped me. Like I've heard all these people's stories, but my story is nothing like any of the other ones that I've heard. So it showed me that it's like my story is going to be mine. And I have to create that and I have to own it. And it's okay that it looks a little bit different from other people. And I think that other entrepreneurs or future entrepreneurs, once they understand that and tap into what their story is, that's where they'll find the connection with their audience. They'll find the connection with what it is that they're even doing, and they won't have to try so hard to sell. I've never once put it online that my schedule is open and I'm accepting orders. Never once. I can literally open my form and inquiries will flood in. Family members reach out to me without even trying. And that's because, yes, I've done the groundwork, but they also know that the passion I've put in, or they see the passion, they know the work I've overcome. They also know some of the things that I've overcome personally. Mm-hmm. And they see through my work that I really love doing this. So I'm just appreciative of people who believe in me, number one. And also, too, I'm only demonstrating what I've been studying and listening to over the years. Like I always tell people, listen to Dreams and Drive podcast. You need a podcast, Dreams and Drive. Like I will tag you or just wherever, because you're just what the platform that you've been able to build is more than just interviewing people. Like I literally took bits and pieces from all these people's stories, and even your solo episodes. Like I remember one where you were talking about motherhood and I was like, oh, I felt that. Like I really did. And I wrote you a long message. And I just appreciate that. And this is what I like to talk about. And I know that other people are out there just like me trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not the CEO of this big company or, things like that, but I still have a story to tell. And I know that the listeners, a lot of the listeners are in the same journey as I am, or just trying to figure it out. Where do they go? So I really wanted people to hear somebody when they're trying to figure it out, because that's where the meat, like I said, we could keep talking. It's a lot of meat. Okay?
Yeah, it's a lot, right?
It's a lot going on in this world and in this mind of mine in particular, to where it is that I'm trying to go. But I really wanted to be transparent, because a lot of people don't talk about this process. They don't talk about the sleepless nights. They don't talk about the missed family gatherings. They don't talk about crying.
I was going to say the mental anguish, right? Like the mental anguish.
Being angry, being feeling defeated. There's all of these things that I feel on a daily basis that I want to just tell people that it's normal, but you have to fight through it.
Yeah.
So thank you for just allowing me the opportunity. And
thank you for sharing the story. Thank you for having that confidence to go to dreamsanddrive.com/pitch and fill it out. So I thank you for that. But, we couldn't end this without our keys to success, right? So if you want to be a dream driver, Yasmin, you have to have your keys to success. So can you tell me 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road?
See, I tried to prepare myself. And
Listen,
what I would say,
whatever comes to mind right now. Don't even look at that list.
I know, right? Because you are prepared, right? I wrote it out, and now I can't find it. It's probably right with them all.
It's fine.
So anyway, I would definitely say the first thing is understanding your why.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate it when people say that. To be honest, they say it at work all the time. But what I mean by understanding your why is like, I do cookies because it brings me joy. I also have that traumatic experience that pulls me back to, my desire to want to do more of what I enjoy. And also too, like I have those college papers that I wrote that I really want to do this. And I understand why, I understand how it makes me feel, and I understand why I want to do it. So once you get to why you're doing it, even if it's for self-fulfillment, it also probably has a bigger purpose as well beyond yourself. You're just the vehicle. But when you understand the why, you can be the vehicle that can take you and open up doors and help other people when you get there. So the why is number one. Number two, right now, my biggest one is to rest.
Yep, that's very important.
It is important and a part of the process to grind and just go for it. But if you are not taking care of yourself in the process, your business is going to be no good.
Mm-hmm.
No good. And you're not going to be good. So, and everyone around you is going to be no good. So at this point in my life, rest is in my toolkit. So I hope it's in other people's too, that in between the grind, it's okay to stop and just rest for a moment. And it's okay. It's okay to do that.
So you have understanding your why, rest, and what's the third one?
The third one is to have a plan. And that's my little action list here.
And that's hard for me. For me personally, that's always been my biggest one too, because I feel like I'm such a dreamer. I'm so creative that sometimes like mapping things out with such detail, I'm like, but that doesn't leave room for spontaneity, right? But like, no, you need to actually map things out, and then you can be spontaneous with that, but that plan really does help.
Yeah, and there's flex. And see, the thing, I think that's where some people kind of get stuck on having a plan, right? The plans never go the way it's supposed to go. But I guess what I really want to say is flexibility with the plan, really, because it's always going to change, but you still need to have a plan. Like, how are you going to move forward? What do you need to do that next thing? Okay. Oh, you need to scrap what you're doing. Okay. Scrap that. Let's change it. But what are we doing? I'm results driven. Like, we could talk about things like all day long, but at the end of the day, what are you going to do about it? When I say plan, you have to at least write it out what you want to do. Like if like me, I wanted to bake, but how was I going to get there? I wasn't doing anything like I did now. I wasn't decorating cakes and cookies. Like I wasn't doing anything like this. I just knew I wanted to bake, right? What kind of business would I have had if I just jumped to opening up a business? Like it would be nothing. It probably would have been shut down, because now when I'm ready whenever it's time for me to open up a business, it's more targeted. It's more me. It's, I've spent the time and the energy of just learning what it is that I enjoy doing. Not what people are buying for me.
Right?
Right. I know what I enjoy doing for other people. You don't have to do everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like I spent the time to really build up a lot of those business skills as well. I've built up the technical skills to do my job. And that plan, having that super crazy action plan that I call crazy, like it literally helped me to create the plan for myself to live a journey live a life that I love, doing what I love. And eventually I know that I'll get to where I want to be. But having that plan is super important. I've had to adjust because it's derailed a couple times. Okay. I got knocked off that rail a lot, but that plan always pulled me back when it was time to get back to business. So those are my three things: the why, rest, and a plan.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Yas. Can you tell our dream drivers where they can connect with you online if they want to see your cookies in person? Well, not in person, virtually, right? Maybe they'll have the chance to order from you. I know, guys, listen, I think back when you weren't doing like decorated sugar cookies specifically, Yas makes one of the best salted chocolate chip cookies I've ever tasted. She sent me a box a few years ago, and I still remember how they taste. All right, so they were good. So tell our dream drivers where they can connect with you online, and get to know you more.
Sure. You can follow me at Sweet Blooming August on Instagram. So you can find all of my cookies and desserts and stuff there. And occasionally my stories, I share some things behind the scenes so you can kind of see what's going on in my world there. Yeah, go ahead and follow me. I also have a personal page. I don't post too much there, but you can see my art there. It's part of my journey. You can see some of my older baking. I left it there. And if you read some of my captions or just kind of look at my stuff, you'll see kind of the journey of where it all started, of when I started blogging and everything like that. That's at Hello Blooming August on Instagram. So personal, Hello Blooming August. And then for a business, it's Sweet Blooming August. So check me out. And at some point, I will be opening up my inquiry form to the public. So it'll be coming soon, but I'm also in transition as well. But if you're in the Houston area and you're looking for some trees, definitely hit me up. You can send me an email or DM and we can talk about it and get you on the calendar. So just stay in touch with me.
I'm just so happy that you shared how hearing people's stories helped you. Because I think sometimes I get so caught up in like, why am I even doing this? Like, should I be more focused? Should I not be more focused? So just hearing how it impacted you really does help me see that, like, girl, no, keep going. I know it's like been 6 years. You may not be like where you want to be, but you are going somewhere. Like, I'm only 30 now, right? There's so much more of me that's left. And I always tell myself, like, year 3, Oprah was still in the newsroom, right? So, like, don't count myself out. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You got to keep going, girl. Like, sometimes you feel like, because I've even felt like that sometimes where it's like, what am I doing? Like, don't nobody be caring about my little captions, about me being transparent.
Somebody over there is looking, right?
And that's when I'll randomly get messages from people like, I feel you. Like, I get it. I'm going through the same thing. Or, thank you. You have inspired me to keep going. And I'm like, wow, I'm just doing what I'm doing. Like, thank you, Mm-hmm. So I totally feel you on that. But I just wanted to let you know, like, for real, like I don't just say that lightly. Like, I literally tell everybody, what's your favorite podcast? Dreams and Drive.
All right. Thank you so much, Yas.
All right. Thanks, Raina.
All right, so that's a wrap for this week's episode. I hope that you enjoyed hearing Yasmin's dream driving journey and her keys to success. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it, right? You can find us across Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Dreams and Drive and use the hashtag Dreams and Drive when sharing. Post us to Instagram story, send it to a friend. Share Yasmin's story because I know that it's going to impact someone out there. If you want to join our weekly newsletter, The Keys, and get weekly updates from me via email, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. And lastly, guys, do you feel like, you have a story to share? I'm always accepting pitches from our dream drivers, from our listeners. So if you want to submit your story, go to dreamsanddrive.com/pitch. That's dreamsanddrive.com/pitch. I love being able to share these stories with you each week. Continue to give me feedback. Let me know how they're impacting you. Let me know what you're taking away, because that also helps me make sure that I am keeping these interviews as relevant and as inspiring, as encouraging as possible. As always, keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in episode 283. Bye, guys.